welcome everybody to the Credit Union Connection. I am your host, Sarah Snell Cook, and I'm here today with a man who needs no introduction, but I will anyway, Anthony Hernandez, CEO of the DCUC Defense Credit Union Council. Welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here. Looking forward to our discussion.
Absolutely. It's great to have you, especially you're in the DC hot pot right now, everything that's going on. Why don't you just do a little more introduction of yourself and Defense Council?
All right. Tony Hernandez. I've been at DCUC for 9 years now, 8 years as a CEO. I came directly after a career in the United States Air Force, where I retired as a full colonel. I went right into DCUC. I mean, I literally relinquished command of my brigade level command. Had about 1,400 airmen working for me. And then went right into DCUC immediately. Like 4 days later, we were in Boston at the DCUC annual conference. I've sort of found something I equally care about, and that's helping credit unions succeed in taking care of their members. And so DCUC has been around since 1963. We're 62 years old, and we primarily started as a CUNA council that was taking care of credit unions located on base. And then we started to expand our operations, because if you take care of military, you automatically take care of veterans. And every credit union has a veteran in it. And so every credit union can join DCUC. And so we'll be going through a couple changes we'll discuss with the board, but we just have been expanding a lot of things we're doing. I'm excited to talk about some of those maybe a little bit later on, but it's been a great run with DCUC. It runs a gamut from really large credit unions to really, really small credit unions. And they all have the same passion for serving their members. And it's just been great. So it's almost, it's been a fantastic second career for me, and being able to do it. And I still, because of DCUC and our historical roots, I'm still able to be connected with the military, and that makes it kind of nice. But we're ready to branch out and just focus on a lot of our credit unions. I guess America's, vast credit union universe that's out there, and I've seen similarities in all of them. That's I hope that answered the question.
Yes, because you brought up a great topic of, the bankers are trying to split the big and the small, but we're all about the same purpose. And that's the reason that credit unions aren't taxed, not because of their size or whatever, they're offering that banks also offer. So,
that's a great point, because it's a classic divide and conquer strategy, right? Get us fighting amongst ourselves, and then they just sit back and eat their popcorn. We ought to be doing the same thing, because the banks complain about themselves selling to credit unions, and credit unions, taking over, where a bank was going to go out of business. But if we didn't do it, the big banks would be there. And so they have a similar structure, but we as an industry, we're not good at what I call pulling the string on that sweater, right? They always pull all the strings on ours, but we ought to fight back a little more cleverly, and see if we can pull that string and see how fast that sweater comes apart. And I'm just using, I'll use a whole bunch of metaphors.
I love it.
People will relate to that, right?
I can see it. Yes. That's how good communication happens. So, yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. I think credit unions, enemies, if you will, and community banks' enemies are the big banks. It's not banks versus credit unions. This is silly. Neither of us have
Absolutely.
We're both shrinking. Why fight each other?
Exactly. Well, and that's another thing that I saw, is why community banks make a decision, to sell to a credit union.
Yes.
And that's decisions based on economics. And so why would their industry trade association want to eliminate potential buyers? Aren't they screwing over their own members when they're when they're not allowed to get the highest offer for their selling their operation, their banking operation.
Yeah.
And kudos to credit unions because we don't want to see banking deserts go out there, and there's an opportunity, and if it's serving people, we ought to, we ought to be very proud of our tax exemption. We don't take we don't shy away from that because we're still
Mhm.
serving people. And it preserves some jobs in those communities, with the bank tellers and the bank loan officers. There's room to keep that economic stimulus going in that community. Otherwise, it just goes away and
Right.
there's nothing there. And I think that's the argument. You know, I like to talk in terms of offense and defense. There's some in the industry that may not like those, but I like taking a more playing on their side of the field, which indicates offense, right? And start taking the initiative. That's another word. Rather than being reactive to what the bankers are throwing at us. Why can't
Mm.
we as an industry come up with a set of talking points backed by data to take let them defend what they're doing, and I think
Yeah.
if a divide and conquer strategy worked good on the credit union industry, it'll work even more so on them because they've never had to face it before, right?
Right. We're used to it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, one of the objections too to the credit unions buying banks is that there'll no longer be an institution under CRA there. And I've spoken with the lawyers that do those deals, and they say credit unions meet if not exceed the CRA requirements.
Yeah,
That's one of the tests that they do when they do a purchase.
that's an empty argument because
Yeah,
banks are
absolutely.
required to be under. I mean, if they didn't have CRA, they wouldn't be doing. They
Hmm.
wouldn't be doing a fraction of what credit unions do. They'd be buying their second or third yacht, their fifth mansion, and I'm exaggerating. I get it, but you get the point. The money would be going to shareholders. It wouldn't be going back into the membership or the community. And the only reason why they're there is because they took advantage of some very good hardworking people, and now they have to operate under Community Reinvestment Act. And so
Hmm.
yeah, we got to get good at pulling that string on that sweater also,
Yeah.
and get seize the initiative and be proactive in arguments and put them on their heels, defending it.
And they're always talking about or all about small business and how they help small business in the communities. But when you abandon a community, there's no capital to get to run your business or start your business. So
Yeah.
really all of it falls apart, I think, personally.
Oh, that's another area. We've been championing veteran business lending for several
Hmm.
years now. I think that's a step toward the larger member, relief from the member business lending caps that got put on credit unions. But what I like about the veteran business member lending act that's currently been introduced in the Congress is that it allows for a dollar for dollar reduction from the member business lending caps. And the beauty of that bill is that who wants to do something against veterans? So if the banks oppose us on that, that's a talking point. We ought to be, that's one where we take scissors and go at the sweater anyway, right? I mean, it's because and that's what I like about what we do, being uniquely positioned to make that argument.
Hmm.
Or help all credit unions make that argument because all credit unions have veterans, and when we do a veteran business member lending act, and of course the banks are going to bellyache about it, but they're really taking away opportunity from veterans, and shame on them. You know,
Hmm.
we ought that's the message we ought to be doing.
There's an editorial cartoon I see right there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what are the most pressing issues for credit unions right now, and particularly the military credit unions?
Well, again, if it affects a military credit union, it affects all credit unions, and vice versa. Yeah, we have some military uniques that I'll get into a bit later, but right now we are all together in fighting this move to tax credit unions. We are all working to protect the industry's tax exempt status, because that's existential to our industry. If that goes away, we no longer have an industry. All our system partners no longer have clients, so their business goes away. And so it's very bad on what would happen. You know, I've heard some people, you know, say, well, why don't we negotiate for a limited increase? No, it just opens the door to everything else. You know, we've got to fight this, you know, head on. So that's one issue. The other issue is the Credit Card Competition Act, and we're seeing that get inserted into several must-pass legislation. Next week, the Senate votes on their Genius Act, which deals with stablecoins, and the move to attach Credit Card Competition Act to that. And so we're fighting that. These are things, you know, the larger battle is a tax exempt battle, but these happen underneath that. And you got to pay attention to all of them, just like the CDFI fund. It got threatened, and we have to sort of pull out of this fight and fight that one simultaneously. There's the Senator Hawley and Senator Sanders have introduced a 10% credit card interest rate cap that estimate both the banking and credit union industries if that got implemented. So we're fighting that one too. And then right around the corner, you know, and in fact, this morning I was talking with Becky Reed, you know, about what happens, you know, with the payment landscape with the rise of stable coins. Because once the Senate passes their Genius Act and the House passes their Clarity Act, it's going to switch really quick. You know, it's gonna, you know, the payment platforms we're using now will go the way of buggy whips did when Henry Ford introduced the automobile. You know, the buggy whip industry went away very quickly. You know, because you know everyone was driving cars now. I see this with the demographic change in our industry. A lot of young people want something different, and they want faster payments, and they want easy payments. And so stable coins has to be protected, and you got to have a good network. But that's the wave of the future. And it's not something, well, we'll study it this year and dabble in it the next and learn. You're going to have to go move very, very quickly. And so understanding that is becoming a hot topic in our industry because the legislation's already there. Your question was on military specific stuff, right? And so the stuff we worry about on military installations is being able to provide financial literacy requirements to our young enlisted troops, or even the officers. Heck, you don't have to be a young one. You could be a colonel like myself and still have financial problems because it's not taught in high schools. It's not taught anywhere. And so DOD formed their own financial readiness group, and they sort of develop an organic. But you know, as a former member of the military, who wants to read that stuff? It's a government-owned you know, resource. And are they tracking my, you know, submit your income to debt ratio? Well, who wants to do that on a government platform? You know, it's just not going to happen. And credit unions and banks, because I'll throw them in since this is a financial services issue. We operate on bases. Credit unions and banks, we operate on bases for free. And in our operating agreements, we're required to provide financial education requirements. We call it financial readiness because that's got a military flavor to it.
Sure.
But what we've seen since DOD stood up their financial readiness cell, they've been given the Heisman to both banks and credit unions because they think there's a conflict of interest there. I'm like, you guys asked us to come on the base and provide all this stuff. So, you know, miss me with that. We're required to do it. And quite honestly, it's a safer way for military members to get help, right? Because it's confidential. We can already see their if they have an account at the credit union, we can already see where they're in trouble. We can see that their credit card is maxed out, and that payment or that money comes in on the 1st and the 15th of the month, and it's gone on the 2nd and the 16th because they paid all their bills and they're coming to us for loans. And so, you know, I was at a CFPB seminar a couple of years ago, it was getting that financial readiness for military members. And I remember this same group, DoD FinRed, was bragging about, 85% of the people they talk to are financially ready now. And, then I raised my hand. Everybody got that collective, oh, here we go, right? I
Mhm.
said, that is bad data because I'm looking at hard financial data based on all those factors I just mentioned. Credit cards are maxed out. They don't qualify for a loan. Money comes in and out of the account. I said that's 45% of the military and all ranks represented, that really aren't financially ready. And you could see the long faces from the stage when I pointed that out. So I ate lunch by myself that day. That's no big deal. But you got to put some truth to this stuff, and that's the stuff we
Mhm.
see every day. And so that's a big issue. And then competition, because if we're going to be doing all this stuff for free, especially one thing a lot of people don't realize is that banks and credit unions are often asked to support the military mission with cash, right?
Mhm.
When you deploy into an austere location that doesn't have anything,
Mhm.
it's probably just a hard dirt landing strip. It's got no internet, doesn't really have a ATM or any of that other stuff. And those local chieftains that you're negotiating with, they don't take American Express. They sure as heck don't take Bitcoin, although they might adopt that technology
They may
faster than
skip
we
right
do.
over, yes.
But they take U.S. dollars, and so
Mhm.
you see it in movies, and you see military folks, people sitting on $50 million of cash. Well, that
Mhm.
comes from the banks and credit unions on the base, to
Yeah.
move that through, and we provide that for free. And so one thing we ask the military is if we're going to be doing all this stuff, can you give us consideration by not allowing other banks or other credit unions onto the base to market to military members? And
Mhm.
that seems like a fair trade-off to me, but you'll see a lot of encroachment on the bases because the other banks and the other credit unions will sponsor something and
Right.
forcing the rules. And so that's always a headache, is the one bank and one credit union policy that's in the Code of Federal Regulations. The problem is nobody's monitoring that. And then those are the two big issues. And then everything beneath that is um, just 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 the operational issues that we deal with. But that's what the council was set up to do historically. And then we've just seen a role for DCUC to get more involved in advocacy.
Mhm.
When the Military Lending Act was passed in 2015, DCUC was not involved in advocacy at that time. And what I've pointed out is that really discriminates against military. Everyone loves this 36% rate cap that includes all the fees. And to be honest with you, there are some small dollar loans that even the NCUA's payday alternative loan would violate the military.
Mhm.
And so it's not good. But if you're a non-military buyer, you can borrow from anybody you want to,
Mhm.
so what you see is a lot of products and services aren't geared for military. And if a young enlisted troop needs $300, they're going to find $300, and it's not going to be from a safe lender, right?
Mhm.
So the very thing that the military proponents of the Military Lending Act wanted to promote, which was get rid of predatory lenders, they actually opened up the field, right? It's
Right.
every
Yeah,
good
all around the
intention.
bases.
Yeah, yeah. You drive right outside the gate, and there they are. Title loan companies, pawn shops. But even in the barracks, you get some other folks making loans, right? It's
Mhm.
just hard to police, and so that's just something else that we fight all the time too. And so that's why we got involved in the advocacy game, is because um, that was a missed opportunity. And my takeaway from that is, hey, there's some things that impact military differently, like the veteran business member lending act, right?
Mhm.
Um, um, I think I said it wrong. Veteran member business lending. There's some, those things that we specialize in and have a different take on it because The tension was, does the industry go for the Member Business Lending Act, or they go for Veteran Member Business Lending Act? And I think a stair step is you take the veteran first because it has a stronger argument. And once
Mm-hmm.
you prove the concept, then you can get to the larger one. And so that's
Mm-hmm.
just sort of a different take, but that's kind of what DCUC provides to the industry right now, is a different look at some things. And let's figure out how we can win first. Uh,
Yes.
because winning's nice, rather than, opposing or defending and all that stuff. Because, I think members don't really see that. And so we've been on a roll lately. Hey, I don't know if it'll come up, but we just had the NCUA authorize or provide greater clarity to credit unions for our homeless veterans,
Mm-hmm.
or they call it unhoused, because you can make your home any place, but unhoused veterans, in that they can use the VA hospital where they were getting their veteran care as their permanent address for purposes of opening a checking account. And that's huge, right?
Yeah.
Because the first step in financial readiness is, do I have a safe place to store my money?
Right.
It's not safe in a can or a Ziploc bag that's in a place where the veteran member is unhoused, right? Um,
Right.
and so if you can get your monthly VA benefits or or just a cash that you're able to earn into a safe place, and now you're in the institution, so now you can find other resources that are helpful. Those are the first steps for financial readiness, and so we're very
Especially,
proud of that. And
yeah,
that just
especially if
happened
the
a month ago.
government, yeah,
Yeah,
especially if the government goes to direct deposit only, or
yeah.
more checks. Yeah, they can't.
Well, the VA came to us on the veteran, they call it the Veteran Benefit Banking Program. And
Mm-hmm.
any credit union can join. You don't have to be a member of DCUC. We just help onboard people as part of our agreement. But that's because the VA is still processes checks.
Mm,
If you're unhoused, and you don't have a checking account, you got to go cash it at a check cashing service, and you're going to pay a hefty fee.
yeah.
Or you can lose or damage your check, and it's no good anymore. And so they came to us to find, financial institutions. And the last time I checked, all credit unions offer a free checking account. If the veteran asks for some financial help, or guidance or wellness training, you'll be able to provide that. And
Mm,
last time I checked, all credit unions do both of those things. So all credit unions are eligible to join. And that's just led to some good conversations with other credit unions, because they always ask, well, what else do you guys do? And just reminded me, we published this veterans guide.
oh,
It's
there goes. Yep.
Yeah, and we did this with the VA because there's a lot of veteran fraud out there.
Mm-hmm.
I did 25 years in the Air Force, and I don't know all the benefits that I'm entitled to.
Mm,
And because I don't know what's entitled to, there's a lot of fraud out there saying, hey, here's this new benefit. And if you're a senior veteran, you're more susceptible to fall for it. Here's this new benefit. Send me your bank account information and your social security number, and we'll get you hooked up. Or you heard about the Camp Lejeune, poisoning in the water system, and you have
mm,
all these ads on TV, these law firms that are ready to help, and some of them are reputable, but the availability for people to take advantage of that is very real out there. So
mm.
we came out with that guide to give the actual resources for veterans to go get help. So long answer to a short question you asked, but we've got a lot going on.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. So, aside from all the DC stuff, what do you think is the biggest threat to credit unions?
Um, well, I mean, there's a lot of folks, I think, particularly with small credit unions. Um, are they going to survive in the new climate? And that's not a new issue. That's just an ongoing issue that I think is picking
Hmm.
up steam. And if you take a step back, our ability to influence Congress and state representative stuff is your small town credit union.
Hmm.
The one I joined, as a member of a church, right? Or at the plant, the factory that I worked at. That's where credit unions that's where the power's at. That's where the constituency's at. And so when you get really big, you sort of lose contact with that, or it's hard to marshal it. And so I fear that we lose what made us great as people get you know get merged or acquired. Uh,
Hmm.
it's not a bad thing. I mean, again, I don't want to do big credit union versus small credit unions. It's just one of those things we have to deal with. And so, how
Hmm.
do we navigate that in the future? And that leads to, regulatory relief. And there's a move out there to uh, do away with audit committees, which sounds good, but until you have a problem, and then you did away with this audit committee. That's not real smart. But yeah, it reduces some of the regulatory burden, but it also keeps you out of trouble, right? And so
Yeah.
that's an issue outside of Washington D.C. That's at the credit
Hmm.
union, and then succession planning.
Yes.
I kind of feel that, if you don't have a simple succession plan, you're just ringing a dinner bell to be acquired, right?
Hmm.
We know what's going on, and then you're just negotiating the price at that point. So I don't think that's healthy either. The other side of the coin is sometimes you can get an NCUA examiner or a state examiner coming in, and their definition of a succession plan goes well beyond what anybody had, and they want you to go down to the director level, 4 levels down the organization.
Mm.
You don't need succession plans that deep, but so it hasn't been bounded correctly because you get lots
Right.
of interpretations. And I heard one the other day that a particular examiner thought the person in charge of the Bank Secrecy Act was the most essential person to have a succession plan. I'm like, really? Um,
Really interesting.
I mean, it's an important position, but would think the CEO would be, important. Um, and then the last thing, with board succession plans, that's very important too. But
Hmm.
that's harder to define because these are volunteers, and so how do you have a plan where you're going to ask someone to volunteer their time? And if you do away with some of these audit and supervisory committees, you do away with your bench. And so a lot of these things work cross purposes. So those are two items I think at the local level, I think credit
Hmm.
unions have to grapple with. That'll bubble up to DC event, that's already here, and how we
Right.
tackle those. But and then you got all the normal stuff, interest rate risk, um, having enough capital requirements, all those operational things that happen. And then how do you find money to grow your credit union? Because we've always been in a grow or die, economy. Either you innovate and have the funds to innovate, or you don't. And as interest rate hikes up there and inflation hikes up there, you're seeing credit unions getting squeezed some more. And then you get into the fee structures, and you know, there's just a whole bunch of stuff out there. I hadn't even talked about technology, right?
Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah.
say.
So, but the good news is that there are people that are out there willing to help. So I know I painted a really gloomy picture, but there's a lot of folks out there that are able, willing to help credit unions succeed, and that's what makes um, the credit union connection. And I just looked up at the sign behind you. That's what makes it that much more special.
Hmm. Well, and I think too, we don't leverage the cooperative nature of the industry nearly enough.
I
Uh,
agree.
and I'm not going to propose or assume what the problem is there. um, but it's really something that is a different superpower. And I think in part, QSOs can be the way, a part of it anyway. And you're seeing more and more of them formed, which is a little bit of an interesting, interesting trend. Um, but yeah, so what do you say about the collaborative nature of credit unions these days?
Well, I learned this in this industry. In other words, being a 25-year military guy, I learned something new, and that was the idea of co-opetition,
Yeah.
right? Which is a great word, and it makes you think about all kinds of different stuff. But I've seen with DCUC, with our member credit unions, people willing to help or credit unions willing to help other credit unions out. And that's always made me very proud as a trade association president to see that happening. And when even stuff where I started to see it was, remember how I mentioned how credit unions have to provide cash for the government?
Right.
They also provide Treasury General Account administration. So when the commissary needs to deposit its daily receipts,
Hmm.
they'll go to their local bank or their credit union and make that deposit into the Treasury General Account. Um, but as banks have left the base because of profit decisions, and it's no longer profitable, credit unions still stay there. A lot more credit unions are taking on the TGA or the Treasury General Account responsibilities. Don't know how to do it. And so we've had credit unions that have navigated that path. And so
Right.
I'm able to connect them to do that. And then when you come to DCUC conferences, you see a lot of interaction between credit unions and boards learning how to do something. And that's that. I think if we can do more of that, um, one thing we've done at DCUC conferences is try to allow for more break time and not
Hmm.
fill the day with speaker after speaker because it can tend to get boring after a while. And we had a saying in the military that the mind can absorb only what the butt can endure, right? And so
I like
you got to get up out of your seat from time to time. Have a long coffee break because people talk. And
Yes.
and if I the one thing I like to see when I'm at a DCUC conference, and people are going to be late getting back, I let it go for a little bit longer. We build that into our schedule because I
Right.
want those dialogues to go on, and then I like seeing people in the evenings afterwards having a beverage or two, right?
Or two. Yes.
Yeah, well, you got to make sure the first one tasted good,
Yeah.
um, but no, but I see a lot of different credit unions interacting, and that's always hopeful for me. Looking at our industry survival because that's the networking is what's important in our industry.
Absolutely. 100% agree with that for sure. Um, so we're also, so you guys have been a lot more active, expanded kind of what you're doing on the Capitol Hill, also seeing you a lot more in the media. We get a couple of your press releases every week or day.
A
uh,
couple times a day.
couple times, huh? And so what's your overall objective for growing the DCUC? Because it sounds like you're definitely in growth mode.
Yeah, and just so people understand, we're only 7 people.
Right, yes.
And I heard this morning. I was talking to Becky Reed, and we were talking about stable coin and stuff. But I liked her saying speed is a new scale, right?
Mm,
And when you only have 7 people, speed counts. Getting stuff out there, making decisions, and getting the copy out there, and uh,
hmm.
not having to go through multiple revisions and edits and approvals. And
Decisions by
so speed
committee.
is
Yeah.
key. But more to your question is when the merger happened between CUNA and NAFCU into America's Credit Unions, I'd never really bought into the one voice for everybody, thing. That sounded good, but we experienced several instances, and I mentioned one with the Military Lending Act where
Hmm.
we need a separate voice out there, and I believe the industry needs a separate voice. And what I found, I don't see if you read our recent press release. We led a industry-wide, all the other national trade associations meeting on the tax exempt. There are lots of different voices out there that represent their members, right? That need that exposure. So I don't buy into the one voice thing so much. I understand having a unified voice on you,
Mm,
but only on issues where there truly is a unified um, issue that we can all rally
hmm.
together, and we'll come together at times, and then we'll separate into our different messaging, and that's the beauty of America.
Hmm.
We have different political viewpoints out there, and it's not good or bad. It just is, and just celebrating those differences. And so, DCUC, we should see ourselves as being the second largest voice,
Hmm.
and moving on up. And I think it's healthy. Like I said, when we agree with the larger trade association, it's a good thing. But when we disagree, we respectfully do that and move on.
Right.
But I also see the fact that we're small can get things out there is that we end up challenging the other trade association to do more, right? To
Mhm.
hone their message, right? To get in there and not assume that everyone's just going to fall in line. You kind of have to compete. And where there's healthy competition, that
Yes.
benefits credit unions. That benefits everybody else in the industry. And so, I almost see ourselves as doing a public service for the industry at large by being out there and doing the work. And yeah, we are pedaling very fast. I'm not gonna lie, but we've gotten used to this pace now, and I'm very proud of what the DCUC staff has been able to accomplish in it's not quite 2 years yet, about a little over 18 months.
Mhm.
Just filling that role, and then I won't get into it much here, but there's much more in store coming down the
Okay.
line. And
You'll be
so,
back on that.
yeah, exactly. I was fishing for another invite, but
Okay, you got it.
but but no,
Well,
I do see us growing a little bit more. There's some things we won't do. I'm not going to do just because there's too many people doing, a regulatory conference or a lending conference or
mm,
a marketing conference. I mean, every league has their version. The other trade association has theirs, and there's a lot of industry partners that do the same thing. We're going to announce a couple partners coming up that we've strategically partnered with to offer that, because I don't have the bandwidth. I don't want to have to hire people to go set up more conferences and then
mm,
run content for those. Why not just partner with an organization that's already doing it? An
mhm,
organization like Q's or AL
mhm.
First, hint, hint, that we could partner with and offer what they offer to our members as well. And that
Yeah,
helps us scale up a whole lot quicker. So stay tuned for future announcements.
maybe even the Canadian connection.
There you go. Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm gonna let you have wrap up. Final thoughts to the Canadian executives out there. What do you have to say?
Well, again, I want to stress that anyone can join DCUC. It's available. Everyone, trust me, um, our dues or our access is very, very low. It's very, very affordable. I think you'd be embarrassed about how low it is, but we want to prove ourselves to you. So that's message number one. The other message is our CEOs and your staff and your members of your credit are the best advocates we have in the industry. And if we can provide you with the tools, the sample letters, the postcard campaigns, the talking points, you guys are our best advocates. And so we will work very hard to supply you with what you need to win the day. And then try to arrange those meetings and then promote what all our credit unions are doing. And so that's our role with DCUC, is to provide you with those things. And then two, let's get along. We all have several common enemies. One is just market conditions itself, but we always have the banking industry. Let's take the fight to the banks, and then let's figure out how to unravel that sweater together. And so I know we can do that. And I'm just thankful for everything that all our credit unions do for each of your communities, and championing that voice.
All righty, thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. I appreciate
Thanks,
it.
guys.
Thanks, Sarah.